Chrisman built El Paseo de Saratoga, where these water sculptures are. Chan, we started making water sculptures together quite some time ago, wasn't it?
Yeah. Across the street at the West Valley Professional Center in 1963. Wasn't that your first fountain?
That was my very first fountain. I made a small model, and Chan and I looked at it. We turned it on his front lawn. It looked good, so we made one about 8 feet high and put it in over there. And that was our first experience of working together. Chan, when you started the idea of El Paseo de Saratoga, what was your idea of how water sculpture would be used here?
I wanted folks to be met by flowing water whenever they came in any one of the half-dozen entrances to the shopping center. The water to originate in a sculptured water source and then flow to the central plaza where we have a reflection pool and a gathering place. Each entry being different, each sculptured water source being different, and all leading them into the center of the shopping center, so that the sculpture became involved with the flow of the water and with the experience of the people visiting the center. Kind of a total environmental sculpture springing from yours.
Chan, what would you say is the reaction of people now that we've had the El Paseo running for about 2 years? How do people seem to react to the water sculptures here?
It brings a lot of life and vitality and sparkle, both the sound and also the dancing reflections of the sunlight on the concrete columns in the building. It adds a great deal of vitality to the central part of the shopping center.
During the years that the sculptures have been running, although some of them went in before other ones, they've matured. The surface has slightly changed. It's become more green. Some of them have slight tinges of other colors. And each one has acquired a real patina and general surface look which is particular to it. Having a water system like this with planting and flowing water is like a garden. The whole place is a water garden as well as an earth garden, and it takes maintenance. The water has to be kept clear, the pools have to be cleaned out, and in the beginning there were quite a few problems with algae and keeping the water flowing and clean. The place looks beautiful today. The water is clear and sparkling and splashing. Chan, what were some of the problems in maintaining the water, keeping it clear around here?
An interesting study, working with the different ways of treating it. We've used 6 or 8 different systems of chemical treatment, which, unlike the swimming pool chemicals, will permit fish and plant life. But most of them, sooner or later, end up with a man on a broom scrubbing hard. That algae is our basic living substance, and it's hard to handle. I'm very hopeful that the ozone equipment which is coming will enable us to work with fish and will be beneficial to the growth of the plants in the pool.
Now I would like to move from the central area to some of the other pools and some of the other sculptures and try to show how the different areas are related to. My wife, Jill Fairchild, who has witnessed the evolution of these sculptures. Jill and I are going to discuss the use of water with public sculpture and how it seems to affect people.
Oliver, why did you begin working with water in your sculptures?
Well, you know, I've always been fascinated with water. I've been diving in the water since I was a child, and I always wanted to use water somehow in my water sculpture, but I could never figure out exactly how to do it. I could never figure out just a way that would really be compatible with the way we live in California and the kind of feeling that we have about water here, the way the light is here. I finally got an inkling of how to do it when I went to Europe and went to Japan and saw ways that people were using water there, the way it's used in the Mediterranean. There are lots of parts of the Mediterranean and parts of Japan, too. They're very like California. in the way you have hillsides sloping down to the sea, you have islands offshore, and I finally worked out a way that I could use water in a quieter, calmer way than the way that you ordinarily see it in Baroque gardens or in Japan.
I've noticed that some of your sculptures bubble and bounce and the water spills over very freely. In others, it flows very slowly and very caressingly. Can you let us know why you changed each mood of each sculpture?
Well, as you can see, this sculpture here is in front of this theater, which is a place that's used a lot at night. It's illuminated. There are a lot of people gather around here, and lights shine down on the sculpture. So we needed something which was much more active, much more bubbly and sparkling than the smoother sculptures like the ones that are further down the mall there, where the water runs in a quieter, smoother kind of way.
Some of your surfaces are textured and some of them are very smooth. Do you feel that that definitely has an effect on the flow of the water?
Oh, sure it does. When the water is very smoothly flowing over a smooth surface, that's quiet and slick. But when the surface is rougher, more agitated, you get a much more coruscating, rumbling, bumbling kind of movement of the water, which gives a whole different kind of feeling. The one is very contemplative, very quiet. The other is gayer, more active, more playful. It just has a different mood. It allows them to both go deeply into themselves, and since there is a sort of action of water, a kind of sound that the water makes, it tends to make a place where water is, it tends to make it a place where you're not so distracted by traffic or by things that are going on around you. And for some reason, and the reason why that could be is that scientifically, negative ionization and dry rubbing, like the scrubbing of dry tires on asphalt or the pounding of feet on pavement, produces positive ionization, which seems to make people anxious, nervous, irritable, whereas negative ionization seems to make people feel benevolent, calm. The feeling that I would like people to get from being close to the water is a kind of feeling of quiet and calm awareness, a feeling of paying themselves and to what is around them without being distracted by outside considerations.
Your sculptures have a very natural movement of water, as opposed to jetting or giant spouts or fountains that use a lot of water and spray. Do you feel that to bring nature into a shopping center or nature into a developed area by having the water move in a more natural way?
Well, all ways that water moves are natural, because water is a natural element. So a waterfall or a charging cataract is as natural as a trickle or smoothly flowing water. But the tradition of spouting and gushing water began in Europe, in Italy and France, during the late Renaissance, when people began thinking of their ability to move water around as a matter of civic, and you do as much as you could with it before you let the river out of town on the other side.
About the use of water in the Mediterranean and gushing, bubbling fountains of water in Europe and the Mediterranean. And I'm wondering how that relates to your sculptures, your water sculptures at El Paseo.
Well, that tradition comes out of a desire to use the water very actively, to use its hydraulic power, to use its pressure, and to throw it up in the air in a kind of exuberant way. And that relates the kind of society in which there's surplus energy and in which the whole idea of using it displays that. Also, it has to do with having plenty of water, with a gushing river that has a lot of hydraulic power behind it. The tradition that I'm more interested in, because it relates more to California, is the tradition where there's much less water, where instead of water being thrown up in the air, it lies quietly in pools. Society where water is extremely precious, where it's a matter of life and death, have to do with using the water in a smooth, contemplative way. This pool that we're sitting next to, with its blue tiles, kind of blue tiles that in Spain and Portugal are called azuelos, reminds me used in the south of Spain, and in where great buildings like the Alhambra in Granada use the water in the way I've been describing. And here we see this water sculpture, which is behind me, where the water runs down it in a quiet sheet. This way of using water is actually very practical in the sense that there's not as much evaporation when it runs down smoothly like that.
That now with the water crisis and certainly with the energy crisis, that there's going to be more of a demand for water sculptures, or on the other turn, that there won't be.
I think it will make people question their use of water more carefully, and of course some people may make a superficial judgment that the use of any water is not to be condoned. But I think the precious and creative use of water is really something that calls our attention to it even more. And when you realize that the is subject to the same kind of conditions as water in a reservoir, that water is not really being wasted, it's being recirculated, then it really isn't a wasting of water. And the sculptures, the smaller sculptures, which are self-tanks of their own, which are part of the sculpture, have to be watered, have to be added to the same amount of water that it would take.
With other sorts of, can you talk to us about the use of light as art in water, and maybe some of your sky fountains, ocean fountains?
The sky fountains are a kind of sculpture made of a strip of mylar 100 feet long and 5 feet wide that goes down to the bottom of the ocean and is attached there, and then it flies up into the sky attached to helium balloons. So in a way it achieves a marvelous uniting of the sea and the sky, and it ripples with the wind and moves with the ocean currents, attracts fish. Divers can play with it. We've recorded some of these on film and with underwater film, and that's another water in my art. It's sort of like flying a kite, except that you do it underwater. At the end of the day, you roll up the sky to contaminate the ocean. But I've done a lot of those and experimented with them pretty extensively. What I would like to do now is do some work in the ocean at night, where the work would be completely immaterial, and you would just use very powerful lights under the ocean, and you would make grids and patterns. And of course, then when you switched off the light, the work of art would disappear.
You film your underwater art pieces, don't you?
Oh, yes. Yes. Naturally, the audience at an underwater art event is not quite as extensive as the audience that we have every day here at El Paseo de Saratoga. And for those people participating, it's very exciting. But in order to allow people to appreciate that on a wider scale, I always film those pieces, and I think of the films as being not only documentaries, but as being works of art in themselves.
You use mylar a lot, and the surface of mylar is very similar in look and texture to the stainless steel or some of the metal with water flowing over it, and it sort of turns the mylar into a sky water fountain almost in appearance, right?
Yes, it does. It's shiny and bright and reflective, and it ripples, so that you can make something very large, but which is very light. It's very transportable. These pieces too. Pack them in a suitcase, plane, or drive somewhere, and unpack the sculpture, and out of one small suitcase comes a sculpture which may be 200 feet long. It's not absolutely slick, shiny. It reflects light, but it has a certain amount of surface tension with the water on it. It also has to do with the way the water flows over the lip of the sculpture, so that it's slightly rounded, just the opposite from the lip of a teapot, where you want the water to go from the teapot into the cup. In this kind of a fountain, you turn the water slowly over the lip so that it gradually doesn't leave where it can be blown off, and that way it sticks onto the sculpture, returns back to the sculpture.